baked biscuits. Look at that. What an empty 200 looks like. Where'd everybody go? As you walk towards the tail of the airplane, the turbulence, the feeling of the turbulence is considerably different back here than up at the front of the airplane. Well, it's now Wednesday, the 27th of October here in Incheon. That would make it Tuesday evening, the 26th, back home on a 48-hour layover. Feels like I've been here for a month, but we should be departing for Hong Kong and Los Angeles later on this afternoon. So yesterday I spent the day making a video explaining the details about international flying on the Boeing 777-200 using our trip from Los Angeles here to Incheon as an example. And it turned into about a 32-minute dissertation, basically international flying review course. So I went ahead and sent that video over to Patreon. It's over on Patreon now. Such a long, detailed video, ad-free. You can get over there for as little as $2 a month or 10% discount for $20. I know a little bit of a huckster there, but it's just easier to put it over there on Patreon and watch it ad-free over there. But I do still want to answer the questions that you guys had about the software that we're using today on our international flying, or on all of our flying, airline flying, plus my software that I'm using personally. And for all my retired airline pilot friends, that 30-pound kit bag that you've been dragging around all those years, breaking your back over, trying to get it to fit beside the seat there, has been replaced with this tiny little iPad. All the information you need to fly is now located, well, it's located up here, but the rest of it that you need to reference is located here on your iPad. All your Jeppesens, all your publications, all your weather information, great new advances in weather information, and that's what I want to show you here today. On this iPad, this is my personal iPad that I sometimes bring with me to work as well, and on here is where I keep the ForeFlight app, a Boeing product, and I'm not sponsored by these guys or anything, but I do use this app. It's an absolute lifesaver when I'm small airplane flying. This is what I use for navigation for the small aircraft, and this is how I get ADS-B data in to the cockpit so I can see where everybody else is, and it's a great traffic collision avoidance safety tool. ForeFlight. I don't use it much when I'm airline flying, other than that backseat driving thing. And regarding the backseat driving in the back of the 737, when you're using these things, you're using the internal GPS to the iPad to locate your position, and the iPads themselves are in airplane mode. Here on the company iPad, all of our Jeppesen plates that we used to have to carry around in the form of paper plates and revise all the time before we went flying, which would lead to a lot of errors and omissions in your paper revisions, that's all been replaced by this program, Jeppesen FD Pro, Flight Deck Pro, and that's what gives us all of our navigation capability. And so the company spits out a flight plan, and you just type in your company and your flight number, and this program will pick up that flight plan and then immediately plot it out here on the chart, and then give you all your airports that you're going to need. Right here you can add your alternates as needed, and all your Jeppesen plates are located right here on FD Pro. And it's just a fantastic tool. It has high IFR charts, low IFR charts, VFR charts, and then of course it's got all your airspace, and it even shows for international flying all the various tracks that are operational that day on your FD Pro charts. Again, this uses the internal GPS to the iPad, and there's your location right there in the purple dot, and you can track your progress across the screen as you go along. And as I was referencing earlier in the video back in the back of the 737, the Jeppesen 10-9 pages are now have the own ship capability. Of course, we're not on the airport right now, so we don't see a dot for our location, but as soon as you get onto this chart, it shows your exact location, and inside these charts is incredible detail as to your taxi route. And this is just an incredible safety advantage now that you can taxi around and reference. It's FAA approved now to have the GPS inside the iPad reference your position on this chart, so you know exactly, you have instant situational awareness of where you are at all times. Now, coming into Incheon yesterday, easiest airport I ever flew into and landed and taxied to our gate. Our gate was located right over here, need my glasses, 109, and we landed over here on 34 left, and the tower simply says, follow the green lights to your gate. And here at Incheon, they have green lights embedded into the asphalt, or the concrete, or the tarmac, if you will, showing your taxi route all the way into the gate. Just follow the green lights, and it took us all the way into the gate. Just a great safety feature, because one of our greatest fears is stumbling around onto an active runway in front of an aircraft that's taking off. And then with this pen here, you can kind of mark your route out as you go along and get your clearance from ATC, and then you can visually see it right here on the chart. Hold short lines, no problem, just mark it off there and follow the GPS cursor. One of the single greatest in aviation software is the weather app, and this is the WSI Pilot Brief weather app. I believe this is an IBM corporation. Again, this is provided to us by the company, and I think you can subscribe to it as well as a private individual. Again, you get your flight plan. The company spits out the flight plan. All you got to do is type in your company and your flight number, and it will spit out or lay out your flight plan on the map here. And on this map is any number of layers that you might need for weather information. Now, this app, in order to remain active or give you current time information, you do need a Wi-Fi connection to run this program if you want to continually update your weather during your long flight. And so, for example, right now I'm showing winds aloft. I'm going to turn these off one at a time here. Winds aloft. By the way, you set your altitude up there, 390, for example, so it gives you a great vertical cut of the weather. As you know, the jet stream, of course, changes with the altitude. So winds aloft, the satellite view, the SIGMETs in green, turn those on and off, the radar view. And one of the greatest advantages that we have nowadays, one of the biggest advances, the airline industry is a very, very safe industry, and yet behind the scenes we have problems with, we're still injuring people even though we're not bending any metal. Why? Because of turbulence encounters, and injuring passengers and flight attendants with encounters with turbulence. So we're just now getting enough technology to really be able to see this turbulence and project it onto these applications. So the turbulence is being shown here in the yellow and orange at a particular altitude, and as you change altitudes, that turbulence area is going to change on you. But what's even more amazing nowadays is these little blue dots. Aircraft, you know, like Google traffic maps, where you use crowdsourcing to determine where the traffic's backed up on your Google Maps. Well, now aircraft have G sensors on them that sense the turbulence level and will transmit that turbulence level down to Earth, down to these guys here, and then they will send that data back to you in the form of these little blue dots. So you can see in real time. You're not only, traditionally we always just relied on PIREPs, or pilot reports of turbulence, and so a pilot would have to make a formal report of moderate or severe turbulence. He would give his altitude, his type of aircraft, and of course his location, and that'll show up on your chart. But now you can just get these little blue dots and tap on them, And there's a TAPS heartbeat, they call it, and it shows you that an A319 at flight level 360 had RMS of a 0.005 G's worth of turbulence right there. Now, I don't know exactly what 0.005 G's means, but you can look at these different numbers and see who's getting shaken the worst. And if your aircraft is part of this system, it'll report your turbulence as well for everybody else to see. So anything we can do to help reduce turbulence injuries in the industry, this is a fantastic new tool, so we can look ahead on our flight plan and have a better idea when we're going to hit that turbulence instead of just hitting it and then pulling the seatbelt sign and telling everybody to take their seats. So when they say to take your seats and fasten your seatbelts, they mean it, because this stuff gets a lot of people hurt every year in this industry. So what is it exactly that you do on these long international flights? Well, we're not just reading novels in the John with the automatic pilot on. We are planning for every single possible contingency at all times, monitoring our navigation, where we are, our fuel state, how our fuel state is doing, and what are we going to do in the event of an emergency. Just like we plan for on every single takeoff, we plan on losing an engine on takeoff. So every takeoff is designed and engineered around that. On international flying, we're constantly looking at our options. If in the event of an emergency, where are we going to go? So we're constantly evaluating our alternate airports that are near us. How far are they away? What's the weather at these alternate airports? Are these alternate airports suitable for some of the following different possible scenarios? A simple engine failure, a fire on board the aircraft or in one of the engines. A medical emergency. Is this place suitable to take a passenger to get medical treatment? In many cases where we're going or we're flying over, it is not. And finally, what happens if you have a emergency depressurization and you need to get down to 10,000 feet? Again, all our ETOPS fuel planning plans on these worst case scenarios for fuel planning, but when you're actually operating the aircraft, you've got to determine what is going to be your plan B for your situation, where you're at right now. And that's what we're constantly evaluating on board the aircraft. And I go into great detail on how we do that and show you some of the different publications that we have on board the aircraft that help us make these decisions as we go through the flight. So the two big pieces of software that I've shown you is Jeppesen FD Pro, Flight Deck Pro for all your Jeppesen products, and WSI Pilot Briefing for all your weather information. Now on my personal iPad, again, it's the ForeFlight program that I like to use for flight planning personally. And now I want to give a plug to I want to make a plug for my friend Jason Miller for an app that I carry around on my personal iPad. Jason from the Finer Points and his Ground School Flight Training app. If you've ever gone back and tried to study for your private pilot written exam as a professional pilot, and you'll be absolutely astonished at how much you've forgotten over the years on the basics that you have to know for a private pilot exam. And that's got to be the hardest rating to get, to go from ground zero to cramming all this pilot knowledge into your head to pass the private pilot written and practical exams. And of course, Jason covers all this in his Ground School app here at the Finer Points. And it's a fun, interactive app that helps you get through the dry material, the mountains of dry material that you need to get through to get to your private pilot check ride and ground school. So thanks for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for everybody on Patreon that make this content possible. No fancy graphics here because this is a field cut video just using the cell phone. I got to head off to Hong Kong here soon. See you here.